Hello, humanoids! This is Ian T. Mello, and welcome to Squared Circle History, the podcast that chooses a promotion, focuses on a specific year, and gives a comprehensive and unbiased look at the best matches, moments, promos, and feuds. I encourage you to check out the actual footage of the wrestling events that are being discussed because, and I cannot stress this enough, the intent of this podcast is to make new fans of the product of the yesteryear. I'm a lifelong wrestling fan, and I love all of the history that there is of televised professional wrestling. So let's travel through wrestling history together here on Squared Circle History. Today we continue our WCW arc and focus in on World Championship Wrestling in 1991, and what a year it was. To put you in the right time frame, let's go through what was happening in pop culture during the year of 1991. In theaters, we saw the release of memorable films such as What About Bob?, The Addams Family, Backdraft, My Girl, Point Break, Fried Green Tomatoes, Drop Dead Fred, Silence of the Lambs, JFK, New Jack City, Boys in the Hood, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Barton Fink, Hook, Curly Sue, Ernest Scared Stupid, Suburban Commando starring Hulk Hogan, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze, starring Kevin Nash as Super Shredder, Beauty and the Beast, Father of the Bride, and Cape Fear. In record stores, we saw the release of legendary albums such as Nevermind by Nirvana, 10 by Pearl Jam, Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden, Blood Sugar Sex Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Achtung Baby by U2, Gish by the Smashing Pumpkins, Trompe Le Monde by the Pixies, The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest, Sailing the Seas of Cheese by Primus, Arise by Sepultura, No More Tears by Ozzy Osbourne, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 by Guns N' Roses, Apocalypse 91 The Enemy Strikes Back by Public Enemy, Tupacalypse Now by Tupac Shakur, Emotions by Mariah Carey, self-titled albums from Metallica and Temple of the Dog, Death Certificate by Ice Cube, Innuendo by Queen, and Into the Great Wide Open by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. On television, we saw the debuts of noteworthy shows such as Dinosaurs, Home Improvement, Step by Step, Maury, The Ren and Stimpy Show, The Red Green Show, Rugrats, Doug, The Commish, Silk Stockings, Land of the Lost, Salute Your Shorts, Clarissa Explains It All, Dark Shadows, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, and Darkwing Duck. Hulk Hogan once again rose to the top of the WWF, feuding with the Iraqi sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter, but all this pales in comparison to what was happening in WCW. Despite an unthinkable departure from the promotion by mid-year, the company trekked on, breaking away from the NWA and forming their own champions and identity. Join us on this trip as we journey back to WCW in 1991. The January 5th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Paul Lee Dangerously interview Rip Rogers. A unique challenge was issued by Rogers, wanting to face Flyin' Brian Pillman in a match where there could be no pinfalls in the first 5 minutes. Rogers called himself a marathon man, claiming that he'll go as long as it takes to get the job done. He told Pillman to watch his carbohydrates and fats because the healthiest man in wrestling was in shape and ready for a victory. Flying Brian Pillman battled Rip Rogers in a match where pinfalls weren't permitted in the first 5 minutes, even though both still made attempts and the referee still counted. Rogers dropped a double axe handle off the top rope, crashing onto Pillman on the floor. This caused Pillman to topple onto a row of steel guardrails, crashing to the concrete. Rogers continued his assault in the ring until the 5-minute time period expires and pinfalls became legal. The action spilled to the floor, where Pillman soared off a catwalk with a flying clothesline, taking out Rogers on the floor. Rogers recovered, hoisting Pillman up for an airplane spin. In the end, Rogers was the dizzier of the two, missing an elbow drop and allowing Pillman to connect with a spin kick. Back in the ring, Pillman launched off the top rope with a big splash, with Rogers lifting his knees up to provide a harsh landing. Moments later, Pillman dove off the top rope, rolling up Rogers with a sunset flip to pick up a pinfall victory. At ringside, Missy Hyatt interviewed Alexandra York and Michael Wall Street, who had just won an enhancement match in less than the time that York's computer predicted. Paulie dangerously interrupted, angry that Hyatt was doing his job. Hyatt claimed that Dangerously was jealous that a woman could do his job better than him. York questioned Dangerously about whether or not he was a chauvinist. Dangerously was quick to exit, saying he'd see Hyatt sooner rather than later. The Nature Boy Ric Flair cut a promo on Sting, saying, "All this while, it's been me driving you crazy." Flair said that he's back and ready for the World Heavyweight Champion. Jim Ross interviewed football great Lawrence Taylor, who said, "Paulie sounds like a girl's name." Taylor said that he's going to coach Lex Luger to a victory in his upcoming football match against the Big Cat, who was managed by Paulie. Ross said that Paulie likes to interfere, with Taylor saying he's one fight Paulie wouldn't want to tangle in. Jim Ross interviewed Missy Hyatt and Paulie Dangerously, hyping their upcoming arm wrestling match at the Clash of the Champions. Hyatt insulted Dangerously, saying he still lives at home with his parents. Dangerously said that Hyatt should move back home so that her parents can buy her some decent clothes. He said that at the Clash of the Champions, he wants Hyatt to dress like a lady, not like what she really is. Insulted, Hyatt smacked Dangerously across the face, saying, "Wear that." The January 12th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured footage from the night before in the Meadowlands. Lawrence Taylor accompanied Lex Luger to the ring for his football match against the Big Cat. Both Luger and the Cat competed in football helmets, shoulder pads, and jerseys. To win, you must toss your opponent over the top rope with both feet touching the floor. With the referee distracted by Paulie Dangerously, the Cat tossed Luger over the top rope. LT helped Luger back in the ring, who clotheslined the Cat over the top rope in front of the referee to pick up the victory. On the same event, Sting defended the World Heavyweight Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Sting leaped off the top rope with a high cross body, taking out both Flair and the referee. The action continued, with Sting and Flair bouncing off the ropes and colliding heads. An unconscious Flair fell on top of Sting, with a weary referee making the 3 count despite Sting's foot being on the bottom rope. Ric Flair was crowned the World Heavyweight Champion for a 7th time. At ringside, Missy Hyatt interviewed Alexandra York, only to be interrupted by Paul E. Dangerously. He had an offer for Hyatt, allowing her to back out of her arm wrestling match on the upcoming Clash of the Champions. Dangerously threatened Hyatt, saying he was going to reveal how she got her job and what she's doing to keep it. Insulted and in tears, Hyatt made her exit as Dangerously got hold of the microphone. Just as Dangerously began yelling at York, Michael Wallstreet arrived. And intimidated Dangerously cracked, gushing over Wallstreet and calling him his favorite wrestler. They were out of time, with Dangerously blaming Hyatt for taking up too much time. The January 20th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured the workout video of Paul E. Dangerously. From the gym, Dangerously cut a chauvinistic promo saying that he was going to set the American man free and send the woman back where she belongs. In the main event, the Four Horsemen, the World Heavyweight Champion the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and Sid Vicious, faced Sting, Flying Brian Pillman, and the Steiner brothers. The action got out of hand, with all 8 brawling in the ring and the referee calling for a disqualification. The January 20th edition of the main event saw Paul E. Dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guest was the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who said that Scott Steiner has crossed the line and entered no man's land. Flair hyped their upcoming encounter at the Clash of the Champions, where he promised to show Steiner why he's the 7-time world champion. The January 26th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured a vignette of Arn Anderson and Barry Windham walking through a junkyard. Anderson said that they need to go back to basics, saying that they were too used to the cushy life. Carrying a sledgehammer, Windham said that the way of the 90s is to tell no lies. Windham said that when the Horsemen say they're going to do something, they get it done. Anderson said, "I want everybody affiliated with WCW to prepare themselves for Armageddon." They began smashing cars with sledgehammers, with Anderson saying, "This may be a symbolic way of showing you the primitive way we're gonna deal with things." The Clash of the Champions, Dixie Dynamite, took place on January 30th from Gainesville, Georgia. Making his return to join the broadcast team was the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. In the opening match, Sting and Lex Luger challenged Doom for the World Tag Team Championships. Dangerous Dan Spivey attacked Luger at ringside, allowing Doom to double-team Sting. The referee got in the way, getting knocked to the floor. Butch Reed tossed Sting over the top rope, with the referee calling for a disqualification. Both teams continued brawling in the ring until Sting and Luger were left standing tall. Alexandra York unveiled her latest client, Terry Taylor. Ricky Morton battled Taylor, who had York in his corner with the computer. Tony Schiavone interviewed Stan the Lariat Hansen, who had tobacco spewing from his mouth. Hansen talked about the brutality that occurred in a match between him and Big Van Vader in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He hyped their upcoming confrontation at Wrestle War, warning the people about the violence that's going to take place. Missy Hyatt and Paul E. Dangerously engaged in an arm wrestling match. An official arm wrestling table was set up in the middle of the ring. Hyatt took off her track jacket, unveiling a revealing workout outfit. Distracted, Dangerously was humiliated, with Hyatt slamming his arm to the table for a victory. the Horsemen, Kevin Sullivan, Woman, Alexandra York, and Mike Rotunda were shown sitting at a table with Lawrence Taylor at LT's sports bar. Flair said that he and LT were the greatest, with LT saying, "What can I say? He's telling the truth." In the main event, the Nature Boy Ric Flair defended the World Heavyweight Championship against Scott Steiner, who was accompanied by his brother, Rick. Sitting at ringside was Hiro Matsuda from New Japan Pro Wrestling, as well as El Gigante, who attempted to shake Flair's hand but was denied. Scott had an early advantage and took down Flair with a Steiner line. Flair crawled onto the ramp for safety, with Scott suplexing him back into the ring for a 2 count. The champion gained control and made the cover, hooking his feet on the ropes for leverage. Rick pointed the cheating out to the referee, with Flair breaking the pin. This allowed Scott to take down Flair and lock him in a figure 4. After making it to the ropes to break the hold, Flair charged at Scott with a high cross body, with the two tumbling to the floor. Flair attacked the knee of Scott, continuing the assault in the ring. The Nature Boy applied a figure 4 leg lock, repeatedly grabbing the ropes for leverage, with Rick prying his hands away. In the middle of the ring, Flair locked in the figure 4, with Scott rolling over to reverse the pressure. With the hold broken, Scott hit Flair with a spinning neckbreaker and tossed him to the floor. Scott charged at Flair, knocking him to the concrete with a Steiner line. Rick rolled Flair into the ring, and Scott rolled him up with a small package, only gaining a 2 count. Scott hit Flair with a Steiner line, knocking him to the floor. With 3 minutes remaining, Flair was desperate for a win, making multiple frantic pin attempts. Scott kicked out and hit Flair with a Tiger Bomb, with the champion rolling to the floor. Rick shoved Flair back into the ring, where Scott took Flair down with another Steiner line. Scott planted Flair with a belly-to-belly suplex and made the cover, with the referee only able to make a 2 count as the time limit expired. Saved by the bell, Flair retained his title to end the broadcast. The February 2nd edition of the Power Hour saw the team of Sting, Flying Brian Pillman, and the Steiner brothers cut a promo to hype their upcoming War Games match against the 4 Horsemen. All 4 promised to bring the fight to the Horsemen. A rebuttal promo from the Horsemen was shown, with the World Heavyweight Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair saying that they created War Games. Flair said, "You will bleed and you will sweat until you submit or surrender." Arn Anderson said that between 1986 and 1987, the Horsemen competed in 25 War Games matches, saying they are journeymen. Arn Anderson battled Beautiful Bobby Eaton to determine the #1 contender to the World Television Championship. They battled back and forth in a hard-hitting encounter until Eaton picked his spot, leaping off the top rope to hit Anderson with the Alabama Jam. A crafty Anderson grabbed the bottom rope to avoid a pinfall attempt. Anderson rolled up Eaton, pushing his foot against the bottom rope for extra leverage to steal a pinfall victory. The February 2nd edition of NWA Pro featured Arn Anderson and Barry Windham in action against Ricky Morton and Wildfire Tommy Rich. It was a competitive bout with a hard-hitting encounter ensuing. Teddy Long came to ringside, distracting Anderson from the action. Just when Anderson grabbed Long by the lapels, he was ambushed by Ron Simmons. Windham attacked Simmons, bashing him over the head with a chair. Meanwhile, Rich and Morton picked up a victory by countout. The February 2nd episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. After touting his latest victory, Flair was interrupted by El Gigante, who said, "I want the belt." Flair wasn't intimidated, saying, "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." In the main event, Four Horsemen members Arn Anderson and Barry Windham were in action against White Lightning, Brad Armstrong, and Tim Horner. A great back-and-forth technical wrestling match ensued, with Armstrong and Horner putting up a great fight and winning the crowd over. Just as things were heating up, the World Tag Team Champions Doom attacked both teams to cause a disqualification. The Horsemen were left standing, with the champions retreating. Paulie Dangerously hosted the Danger Zone, joined by his guests, Doom. Butch Reed said that Teddy Long was down in Florida buying condos. Ron Simmons interrupted Reed, saying they need to focus on what made them the champions or they're going to lose their belts. Simmons stormed off, with Dangerously saying that he needs to find Long and find out what's going on. Jim Ross interviewed El Gigante, who said that he wants the belt. Ric Flair interrupted, getting in Gigante's face and screaming at him. Gigante entered the ring, interrupting a match and daring Flair to face him. The Horsemen ambushed Gigante from behind and restrained him while Flair chopped at his chest. It wasn't long before the Steiner brothers raced in to save Gigante and run off the Horsemen. The February 9th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured footage of El Gigante coming to ringside to confront the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who was standing in the ring. Gigante told Flair that he wanted the belt, with the champion slapping him across the face. Angry, Gigante entered the ring, choking Flair until wrestlers had to pry him away. Paulie Dangerously hosted the Danger Zone, joined by his guest, the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. The champion said, "I am still a kiss-stealing, wheeling-dealing, jet-flying, limousine-riding, son of a gun, custom-made from head to toe, more woman than I've ever had lined up on the left and on the right." Flair wasn't worried about El Gigante, bragging about how long he's had the belt. In an empty Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, Gordon Solie interviewed Dusty Rhodes while walking the grounds. Rhodes talked about having so many memories about competing in the Omni. Solie talked to Rhodes about transitioning from the ring to the broadcast booth. The attention focused to Dusty's son, Dustin, who the American Dream said would be one tremendous wrestler. Solie announced that Dusty would be competing in his retirement match at the Great American Bash. The February 16th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Wildfire Tommy Rich in action against Jack Victory, who was joined by Rip Morgan. Just when Rich had the match won, Morgan ambushed him to cause a disqualification. A presumed fan raced into the ring, wielding a large wooden stick, to cause Victory and Morgan to retreat. Officials surrounded the fan, with head of security Doug Dillinger ordering that the fan in the red hat and flannel be removed. Rich vouched for the fan, leading him away through the curtains. The Natural Dustin Rhodes made his debut, battling Rip Rogers. Rhodes was successful, defeating Rogers with a running bulldog. Jim Ross interviewed Wildfire Tommy Rich, who explained to Doug Dillinger that the so-called fan was actually his friend from Portland, Big Josh. Dillinger agreed to release Josh, but warned Rich to keep him under control. Josh was excited to meet Jim Ross, and even more elated to find out that he was on television. The February 23rd episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guests were the Four Horsemen, with the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, cutting a wild promo to hype War Games. Fly and Brian Pillman competed in an enhancement match, only to be ambushed by the Four Horsemen. It was known prior that Sting and the Steiner brothers weren't in the building, with nobody to save Pillman from a brutal 4-on-1 beatdown. Live on location in Phoenix, Arizona at the site of Wrestle War, Missy Hyatt interviewed an irate Sting. He said that he'd have to speak to the Steiner brothers to devise a new strategy for War Games. The February 24th episode of the main event saw Missy Hyatt at a restaurant with El Gigante, begging him for an interview. Gigante wasn't interested, instead slow dancing with Missy. Wrestle War took place on February 24th from the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, Arizona. The tobacco-spewing Stan the Lariat Hansen battled Big Van Vader in a hard-hitting war. They fought on the ramp and around ringside in a violent bout. Both men brawled back into the ring, shoving referee Randy Anderson aside to cause a double disqualification. Vader leapt off the top rope, crashing into Hansen with a flying body tackle. Hansen fought back, using his bull rope to choke Vader, until Vader got hold of the rope and wrapped it around Hansen's neck, dragging him all the way back up the ramp. Lex Luger defended the United States Championship against Dangerous Dan Spivey. The champion took a beating, but ultimately outsmarted Spivey, who tried to press slam Luger off the top rope. Luger rolled through with an inside cradle and scored the pinfall victory. Tony Schiavone stood on the stage alongside WCW official Grizzly Smith and former United States champion Nikita Koloff. Lex Luger was presented with a new United States Championship valued at $20,000. Koloff said that it gave him great pleasure to present the new belt to Luger. At that, Koloff clobbered Luger in the face with the belt, knocking him off the stage. Koloff was insulted that Luger wouldn't give him a title shot, saying that he had to prove himself since he's been away for 2 years. He said that he was going to take the belt away from Luger. Teddy Long accompanied Doom to the ring to defend the World Tag Team Championships against the Fabulous Freebirds, who were accompanied by their new manager, Diamond Dallas Page, the Road Boss Big Daddy Dink, and the Diamond Dolls. During the bout, Long tossed Butch Reed a pair of brass knuckles, while Ron Simmons held Michael P.S. Hayes in place. Reed swung, with Hayes ducking and Simmons getting knocked out. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin covered Simmons and scored the pinfall victory, with the Fabulous Freebirds crowned the new World Tag Team Champions. Following the match, an angry Simmons shoved Long to the mat. Reed attacked Simmons and used the brass knuckles to pummel his now former partner. In the main event, the Four Horsemen, comprised of the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Barry Windham, Sid Vicious, and filling in for an injured Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, battled Sting, the Steiner Brothers, and a hurt Flying Brian Pillman in War Games. Despite having his shoulder heavily bandaged, Pillman raced into the cage to battle Windham for the initial 5-minute period. Pillman used the cage to his advantage, flipping Windham with a flying head scissor. He followed it up by connecting with a missile dropkick off the second rope to take down Windham. Pillman rammed Windham's face against the cage, raking it back and forth to bust him open. The bloody forehead of Windham became a target for Pillman, who scratched and clawed at the cut. Pillman violently tossed a bloody Windham from one ring to the next. At the end of the 5-minute period, a coin toss took place, won by the Horsemen. Nature Boy Ric Flair raced in, engaging in a chop fest with Pillman. A bloody Windham ambushed Pillman and tossed him shoulder first against the cage. Sting joined the fray next, taking down both Flair and Windham with a double clothesline to bring the fans to their feet. The war waged on, with Zbyszko the next to enter the cage. Sting raced across one ring, leapt over both sets of ropes, and tackled Zbyszko to the mat. Meanwhile, Pillman wrenched at Windham's legs in a figure 4 leg lock. Rick Steiner joined the fray, taking down both Flair and Windham with Steiner lines. Flair was soon rendered a bloody mess after Rick raked his forehead back and forth against the cage. Sid entered next to round out the Horsemen, holding Rick to allow Flair to connect with a kick to the groin. Pillman got a hold of Flair, raking his bloody face against the cage. Scott Steiner was the final entrant, beginning the match beyond. He charged at Zbyszko, executing a Tiger Bomb. Sting raced across one ring, hitting Flair with a Stinger Splash. He then locked Flair in the Scorpion Deathlock. Sid honed in on the hurt shoulder of Pillman, ripping off the medical tape to expose the injury. Moments later, all 4 members of the Horsemen found themselves trapped in figure 4 leg locks, with the fans roaring in approval. After Sid escaped, he went back to working on the shoulder of Pillman. Sting pressed Flair in the air, bouncing him off the roof of the cage. All 8 battled in one ring, where Sid hoisted Pillman up for a powerbomb. Pillman's feet hit the roof, with Sid dropping him on his head in a scary scene. Sid proceeded to hit a second powerbomb, with Pillman rendered unconscious. El Gigante raced down the ramp and ripped the door off the hinges to check on Pillman. Referee Nick Patrick called for the bell, with the Horsemen declared the winners. Gigante carried the unconscious body of Pillman away up the ramp. Jim Ross interviewed referee Nick Patrick, who said that he stopped the match because Pillman was unable to speak for himself. Patrick didn't want to be responsible for any long-term injuries, with Pillman being unconscious, and had no choice but to end the match. The March 2nd episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview Flying Brian Pillman about his problems with the 4 Horsemen. Pillman said that he wouldn't let the Horsemen deny him of the opportunities he's earned. He said, "You may have broken my shoulder, hurt my neck, but you'll never extinguish the flame that burns within me. Pillman said, everything this body has, every ounce, every fiber, is gonna be coming after ya, so get ready. Sid Vicious was in action, defeating the debuting Mark Marrow with a powerbomb. Medics began to roll Marrow away on a stretcher until Sid clobbered his defeated opponent across the back with a steel chair. Sid shoved the stretcher over, with Marrow tumbling to the concrete floor. While Sting and El Gigante competed in an enhancement match, the World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Barry Windham invaded the broadcast booth. El Gigante confronted Flair and screamed in his face, "I want the belt." Windham clobbered Gigante across the back, with an angry giant grabbing Windham by the throat and lifting him in the air. Flair bashed Gigante from behind, only for Sting to engage in a tussle with the World Heavyweight Champion. Sting rolled up Flair, with Gigante making the 3 count. Flair was irate, bouncing around and screaming in disgust. The March 3rd episode of the main event saw Paulie dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guest was the living legend Larry Zbyszko, who said that he wants to accomplish his destiny of becoming the World Heavyweight Champion. Zbyszko said that he's calling out Ric Flair instead, who he said was busy fighting Herman Munster. He promised to make his mark in WCW, calling out Sting and questioning how much guts he had. Out came Sting, with Zbyszko slapping him across the face. The two brawled, with a slew of wrestlers and officials pulling them apart. The March 9th edition of NWA Pro saw the Steiner brothers challenge the World Tag Team Champions, the Fabulous Freebirds. Scott Steiner was hurt early on, injuring his shoulder by crashing against a steel guardrail. The champions took advantage of the injury, double-teaming Scott behind the referee's back. Rick Steiner had enough, shoving Jimmy Garvin against Michael Hayes, who tumbled off the top rope. Scott nailed Garvin with a Frankensteiner and picked up the pinfall victory. The Steiner brothers were crowned the new World Tag Team Champions, with the crowd going wild. The March 9th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie dangerously host the Danger Zone, joined by his guest, Teddy Long. Missy Hyatt interrupted, asking Long for his thoughts on the breakup of Doom. Long told her to step back, but said that Ron Simmons had cost him a lot of money. He said that the next time he sees Simmons, he's going to whip him. Out came Simmons, with Long racing away in fear. Jim Ross interviewed Ranger Ross following his victory over Rip Rogers. Out of nowhere, the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, brutally attacked Ross. After bouncing Ranger Ross's head repeatedly off a steel guardrail, an irate Flair scolded Jim Ross for interviewing someone other than the champion. Flair said, "Nobody on God's green earth humiliates me." The March 10th episode of the main event saw Sting battle the living legend Larry Zbyszko. Sting took an early advantage, with Zbyszko powering out of a Scorpion Deathlock to send the Stinger tumbling to the floor. Zbyszko rammed Sting's ribs repeatedly against a steel guardrail, and then locked him in an abdominal stretch inside the ring. Sting refused to quit, pulling Zbyszko to the floor and ramming him against a guardrail. Back in the ring, Sting nailed a Stinger Splash, and then locked in the Scorpion Deathlock, with Zbyszko quickly reaching the bottom rope. Sting refused to break the hold, with the referee calling for a disqualification. Numerous referees attempted to get Sting to release his hold, but the Stinger tossed them both to the floor. The March 16th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw beautiful Bobby Eaton in action against Terrence Taylor, who was accompanied by Alexandra York and her new bodyguard, Mr. Hughes. Taylor used York's computer to waffle Eaton over the head and score the pinfall victory. The World Television Champion, the Z-Man Tom Zink, informed the referee of the act, only for Mr. Hughes to knock the champion to the mat. Owen Hart made his debut, showcasing his high-flying abilities in an enhancement match. Hart hit a twisting high crossbody off the top rope to score the pinfall victory. Teddy Long led Kevin Sullivan and the one-man gang to the ring, with the gang competing in an enhancement match. He was victorious, with the gang obeying the commands of Sullivan. Jim Ross interviewed Sullivan, who said, "The horror has begun." Sullivan said that Long approached him with a problem, Ron Simmons. He said that he found the one-man gang, and now he doesn't have a problem. Simmons does. Out came Simmons, who dared the gang to face him in the ring. At that, the show came to a close. The WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling Super Show took place on March 21st in the Tokyo Dome, featuring multiple interpromotional matches. IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion Jushin Thunder Liger put his innovative high-flying skills on display, battling Akira Nogami in an exciting bout. Nogami was intense, using submissions to wear Liger down. Liger battled back, taking down Nogami with stiff palm strikes and drilling him with a back suplex for a 2 count. After connecting with a cartwheel kick, Liger set Nogami up for a superplex. Nogami knocked Liger to the canvas and flew off the top rope with a diving headbutt. Liger got his knees up, providing a harsh landing for Nogami. The battle continued, with Nogami planting Liger with a German suplex, but only for a 2 count. Multiple pinfall attempts followed, until Nogami leaped off the top rope with a high cross body. Liger dodged it, with Nogami crashing onto the canvas. This allowed Liger to hit Nogami with 2 Liger bombs. Nogami kicked out at 2. Liger dragged Nogami to the top rope, DDTing him all the way to the canvas below. That was enough for Liger to score the pinfall victory. Sting battled the Great Muta, with Muta attacking from the start and nearly hitting a moonsault in mere seconds. The Stinger dodged it, with Muta landing on his feet. Muta knocked Sting to the floor and connected with a springboard plancha. Back in the ring, Sting pressed Liger high above his head and threw him to the floor. Sting then leaped over the top rope, diving onto Muta below. The Stinger planted Muta with a bulldog in the middle of the ring, causing Muta to roll to the floor to retreat. Sting continued to wear down Muta in the ring and applied the Scorpion Deathlock. Muta reached for the ropes, with Sting forced to break the hold. After Muta missed his patented cartwheel into a back elbow, Sting soared across the ring with a Stinger Splash. Muta moved, with Sting crashing into the corner. This allowed Muta to moonsault off the top rope, but Sting lifted his knees up to crush the ribs of Muta. Moments later, Muta climbed to the top rope again, but Sting drop-kicked his legs, causing Muta to crotch himself on the top rope. Sting connected with a back suplex off the top rope, with Muta crashing to the canvas. The Stinger leaped off the top rope, but Muta moved, and Sting landed hard on the mat. Both men went for dropkicks at the same time, crashing in midair. Sting applied the Scorpion Deathlock in the middle of the ring, with Muta again making it to the bottom rope. With Muta in the corner, Sting soared across the ring with a Stinger Splash. Muta sprayed green mist into the eyes of Sting, blinding him in midair. This allowed Muta to moonsault off the top rope and pin Sting for the victory. Following the match, Sting ambushed Muta and applied the Scorpion Deathlock in the middle of the ring. Wrestlers piled into the ring to pry Sting off of Muta. The WCW Tag Team Champions, the Steiner Brothers, battled the IWGP Tag Team Champions, Hiroshi Hase and Kensuke Sasaki, with both sets of titles on the line. The action was intense, kicking off with Scott Steiner and Hase trading power maneuvers. Rick and Sasaki squared off shortly after, slamming one another around with ease. Scott found himself back in action with Hase, with Scott hitting a fireman's carry off the second rope. Not to be outdone, Rick tossed Hase off the second rope with an overhead belly-to-belly suplex. Soon after, Rick tossed Hase across the ring with a German suplex. Hase battled back and swung Rick around with a big swing that was broken up by Scott, who slammed Hase with a Tiger Bomb for a 2 count. The tides turned, and Hase hit both Rick and Scott with a pair of Uranagis. Sasaki tagged in and tossed both Steiners around with ease. Displaying their tag team prowess, Sasaki suplexed Hase off the top rope, landing on the chest of Rick Steiner below. Sasaki lifted Scott onto his shoulders, with Hase climbing to the top rope to set up for a doomsday device. Rick broke it up and press slammed Hase to the canvas. Scott then lifted Sasaki up on his shoulders, with Rick jumping off the top rope to bulldog Sasaki to the mat below. While Rick fought off Hase, Scott hit Sasaki with a Frankensteiner and scored the pinfall victory. The Steiner brothers were now both the WCW and IWGP World Tag Team Champions. In the main event, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair faced the IWGP Champion Tatsumi Fujinami with both titles on the line. Fujinami out-wrestled Flair in the opening minutes, causing the Nature Boy to retreat to the floor for a breather. The action intensified in the ring, with Flair wearing down the left leg of Fujinami. Shortly after, Fujinami locked Flair in a sharpshooter in the middle of the ring. Fujinami transitioned into a camel clutch, but Flair fought out of it. Flair missed a chop, allowing Fujinami to connect with a lariat. Still, Flair kicked out. Fujinami and Flair traded chops in the middle of the ring, ending with Fujinami hitting Flair with a back body drop. Flair attacked the left knee of Fujinami to ground him, and then hit him with 3 knee drops to the head. Still, Fujinami wouldn't stay down. Fujinami fought back and drop-kicked Flair off the ring apron and to the floor. Both men brawled, with Fujinami bashing Flair's head off a steel guardrail, busting him open. Back in the ring, Fujinami struck a bloody Flair with an enziguri, but only got a 2 count. Both men slugged it out in the middle of the ring until Flair hoisted Fujinami up for a vertical suplex. Fujinami wiggled out of it and rolled up Flair, but only for a 2 count. Fighting on, Fujinami back suplexed Flair to the mat, with Flair breaking a pinfall attempt by getting his foot under the bottom rope. Referee Bill Alfonso got too close to the action, colliding head-on with Flair in the middle of the ring. Still, Fujinami battled Flair and rolled him up with a backslide, but nobody was there to make the count. Fujinami backdropped Flair over the top rope and then suplexed him back into the ring. New Japan Pro Wrestling official Tiger Hattori rolled in as Fujinami rolled up Flair and made the 3 count. Tatsumi Fujinami was the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Fujinami celebrated with the NWA and IWGP World Championships in a huge moment. The March 23rd episode of NWA Pro saw the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, cut a promo. Flair talked about Sting, saying he doesn't have the desire to be the best. He responded to Sting's challenge, saying he'd face him inside a steel cage. Ron Simmons was in action, pulverizing Rip Rogers and scoring a pinfall victory with a big spinebuster. Butch Reed raced in, attacking Simmons from behind to ignite a brawl between the two. They battled up the aisle, with officials attempting to restrain the two while the show went off the air. The March 30th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Dusty Rhodes interview Barry Windham. Rhodes asked Windham when he was going to get his head straight and become a world champion. Windham insulted Rhodes and said, "You used to have a lot of answers, but now you're just full of questions." He said that he had all the tools to accomplish anything he wants. Rhodes said that the Horsemen aren't as bad as they used to be. Windham said that the Horsemen are the same group, but they have things they need to accomplish on their own. World Television Champion Arn Anderson defended his title against Wildfire Tommy Rich. Sid Vicious interfered, attacking Rich's knee behind the referee's back. Rich fought through the pain, with Anderson desperate for a pinfall. The clock counted down, with the time limit expiring. Following the bell, Anderson planted Rich with a spinebuster. Jim Ross interviewed the United States Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, with Nikita Koloff interrupting. Luger and Koloff brawled in the crowd, with members of the locker room prying the two apart in a wild scene. The April 6th edition of NWA Pro saw Flyin' Brian Pillman battle Barry Windham in an exciting bout. Windham attacked the injured shoulder of Pillman, ripping at the tape to expose the injury. Pillman was resilient, with the crowd cheering on. Windham reversed a roll-up, hooking the tights of Pillman to pick up a pinfall victory. Following the bout, Larry Zbyszko interviewed Windham at ringside. Pillman dove off the top rope, bashing Windham with a double axe handle. They brawled into the ring, where Windham further injured Pillman's arm. Just as Windham returned to his interview, Pillman grabbed him back into the ring by the hair. Windham again pounded on Pillman and returned to his interview. Meanwhile, El Gigante rushed to the ring to aid the fallen Pillman. The April 6th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Nikita Koloff win an enhancement match. At ringside, Koloff joined Jim Ross for an interview. Koloff was attacked by the United States champion, the Total Package Lex Luger. They brawled into the ring, with wrestlers racing in to separate the two. Koloff got a hold of the US title, bashing Luger upside the head. Retreating to the floor, Koloff smashed the championship repeatedly against the steel ring posts, destroying it. The April 13th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guest was the World Television Champion Arn Anderson, who said that he's not an underachiever. Anderson hyped his upcoming match at Super Brawl with Bobby Eaton, showing no fear and confident that he'd retain his title. Flying Brian Pillman battled the Nature Boy Ric Flair in an exciting bout. Pillman dominated the early minutes, chopping at the chest of Flair before locking him in a half crab. Just as Pillman punched away at the forehead of Flair in the corner, the Nature Boy broke free with an atomic drop. Flair slowed the pace down, taking the fight to the mat to wear down Pillman. With his feet hooked on the ropes, Flair tried pinning Pillman, but was unsuccessful. Both Flair and Pillman exchanged chops until Flair struck with a blatant low blow. Flair climbed to the top rope, with Pillman slamming him to the mat below. Pillman launched off the top rope, with Flair dodging a missile dropkick. Still, Pillman fought back, leaping off the ring apron with a double axe handle, with Flair catching him with a fist to the stomach. Back in the ring, the two blistered one another with chops, until Flair ducked a dropkick, with Pillman accidentally striking the referee. Pillman launched off the top rope, striking Flair with Air Pillman. With the referee knocked out, Pillman's pin attempt was useless. Arn Anderson raced to the ring, with Pillman knocking him off the ring apron. This allowed Flair to clip the knee of Pillman and cinch in the figure 4 leg lock. Anderson pulled at Flair's arms to provide extra leverage, with Pillman writhing in pain. The referee woke up and made the count, with Pillman kicking out. El Gigante raced to ringside, clobbering Anderson and attacking Flair to cause a disqualification. The April 27th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Missy Hyatt interview Nikita Koloff at ringside. Footage aired from a live event in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with Koloff wrapping a chain around his arm and striking Luger with a Russian sickle. Despite the referee making the 3 count, Koloff was not crowned the new United States champion. Paulie Dangerously hosted a special edition of the Danger Zone, emanating in the locker room of a furious Lex Luger. Screaming into the microphone, Luger said that Koloff had drawn first blood, but he was going to finish it. At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed Ric Flair, who discussed his upcoming match at Super Brawl against Tatsumi Fujinami to determine the undisputed World Heavyweight Champion. Flair said, "For 10 years, one man has been the predominant figure in the world title picture, and that's me. And nobody from 8,000 miles away is going to walk into St. Petersburg, Florida, when I've got a limousine a mile long, 10 beautiful women at my side, and a party going on at the Hyatt Regency, and take this from me." He held up the world title, saying that Fujinami would have to walk that aisle and rise to the occasion at Super Brawl. In the main event, Flying Brian Pillman battled Barry Windham in a hard-hitting match. Just when it looked like Windham had the momentum, Pillman knocked him off the top rope with a big dropkick. Pillman dove off the top rope, bashing Wyndham below with a double axe handle. Back in the ring, Wyndham gained the advantage and drilled Pillman with a brutal brainbuster. Wyndham recklessly pummeled Pillman, accidentally elbowing referee Bill Alfonso in the face. The action continued, with Wyndham locking Pillman in a sleeper hold, hooking his feet on the ropes for leverage. Pillman battled back, taking down Wyndham with a flying clothesline. He dove off the top rope, nailing Wyndham with a missile dropkick for a 2 count. With blood streaming down his face, Pillman rolled up Wyndham with an inside cradle. Arn Anderson raced in, attacking Pillman to cause a disqualification. Anderson drilled Pillman with a DDT, with Wyndham continuing to inflict more damage. Beautiful Bobby Eaton raced in, pummeling both Anderson and Wyndham for the save. Footage aired from the press conference that followed Starrcade in Tokyo, with Nature Boy Ric Flair causing a scene and snatching his World Heavyweight Championship from Tatsumi Fujinami. Flair said, "If you want it, come get it back in America." The May 4th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured a video hyping the debut of Oz, which would be taking place at Super Brawl. At ringside, Missy Hyatt interviewed the Nature Boy Ric Flair, with Paulie dangerously lurking in the background. Hyatt received a telegram, causing her to run away, with dangerously conveniently stepping in to interview the Nature Boy. Flair hyped his upcoming encounter against Tatsumi Fujinami, saying that he was going to prove that there's only one World Heavyweight Champion. He said, "If you like professional wrestling at its best, be there." Later in the show, Missy Hyatt returned to join Jim Ross and Paulie dangerously. Laughing, Dangerously asked Hyatt if she had to call home. Hyatt asked Dangerously how he knew she had to call, with Dangerously saying he orchestrated the whole thing. Dangerously insulted Hyatt, calling her a dumb blonde. Hyatt tackled Dangerously to the concrete, battering him repeatedly. Head of security Doug Dillinger dragged Hyatt away, kicking and screaming. The May 11th episode of WCW Pro saw Larry Zbyszko interview Barry Windham in the ring. Windham hyped his upcoming taped fists match at Super Brawl against Flyin' Brian Pillman. Windham called Pillman a yellow dog and said he'd put him out of wrestling for good. Pillman ambushed Windham, who soon retreated. Super Brawl took place on May 19th, beginning with the Fabulous Freebirds battling the Young Pistols to crown new United States Tag Team Champions. Both Diamond Dallas Page and Big Daddy Dink stood in the corner of the Freebirds, with Brad Armstrong supporting the Pistols. It didn't take long for Big Daddy Dink to be ejected, evening things up. Still, things got out of control with both teams brawling in the ring and the referee accidentally rendered unconscious. A mysterious masked man dove off the top rope and took out the Pistols. The masked man drilled both Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong with DDTs before racing away up the aisle. Michael Hayes scored the 3 count, with the Fabulous Freebirds crowned the new United States Tag Team Champions. Draped in a purple feather boa, Johnny B. Bad made his debut alongside Theodore R. Long. Bad said his catchphrase, "I'm a bad man." Big Josh made his entrance with live bears on leashes on each side, walking on their hind legs. It was a sad sight, with the bears urinating in fear all the way down the ramp. Josh would go on to defeat Black Bart. With the lights out and green strobe lights flickering, Kevin Sullivan trudged down the ramp disguised as a wizard, repeating, "Welcome to Oz." Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion followed. As the wizard led them towards a makeshift castle, an ominous figure appeared, the 7-foot Oz. Wearing a large yellow hat and cape, Oz marched to the ring, stepping over the top rope. Removing his mask and hat, the future Kevin Nash was victorious in short order. Flying Brian Pillman and Barry Windham slugged it out in a taped fists match. After drop-kicking Windham over the top rope, Pillman dropped a double axe handle off the top to the floor. A bloody Windham retaliated by pulling on Pillman's trunks to send his face smashing against a steel ring post. Windham dragged a bloody Pillman by the hair onto the ramp, dragging him off, with Pillman's face colliding with a steel guardrail. Back in the ring, Pillman battled back, only for Windham to drop him across the top rope, throat first. Pillman reversed a suplex and ascended to the top rope. Windham shoved the referee aside and struck Pillman with a low blow. He hit Pillman with a superplex off the top rope and picked up a pinfall victory. Following the match, Windham stomped on Pillman and strutted away up the ramp. With a woman on each arm, Diamond Dallas Page hosted his new segment, The Diamond Mine. He proceeded to introduce his new protege, the Diamond Stud, who would be better known as Scott Hall. Sid Vicious battled El Gigante in a stretcher match, which could only be won once you beat your opponent down, put him on the stretcher, and wheeled him away up the aisle. Those rules quickly changed once Gigante applied a claw on Sid and the referee made the 3 count. Gigante had no time to celebrate as he was ambushed by Kevin Sullivan and the one-man gang. The fight went to the ramp, where Gigante slammed the gang on a stretcher. Sullivan threw powder in the eyes of Gigante and whipped him with a chain. The gang hoisted the stretcher over his head, ramming it over the back of Gigante. Ron Simmons faced Butch Reed in a steel cage match, with Teddy Long locked in a cage suspended above the ring. It was a hard-hitting brawl, with Simmons busted open in the early minutes. Reed pounded on Simmons and planted him with a pile driver. He hoisted Simmons over his shoulder and drilled him headfirst into the side of the cage. Reed leapt off the top rope, hitting Simmons with a flying shoulder tackle. From high above, Long tossed a chain into the ring, with Reed wrapping it around his fist. Reed swung, with Simmons dodging it and nailing a spinebuster to score the pinfall victory. The Steiner brothers defended the World Tag Team Championships against the United States Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, and Sting. Both teams shook hands to kick off a competitive bout between 4 of the most famous wrestlers in WCW. Luger and Rick Steiner kicked things off, with Rick taking the US champion down with a Steiner line for a 2 count. Moments later, Luger swung for the fences, taking down Rick with a big clothesline, followed by a press slam. Sting tagged in, sending Rick sailing over the top rope with a clothesline. The Stinger raced across the ring, diving over the top rope to take out Rick on the floor. Back in the ring, Sting lifted Rick upside down and raced across the ring, smashing Rick against the turnbuckles. Sting raced across the ring, with Rick dodging a Stinger splash and making the tag to Scott. With the crowd roaring, Scott hit Sting with a Tiger Bomb, followed by a tilt-a-whirl slam. Scott hit Sting with an overhead belly-to-belly suplex off the top rope, with the Stinger barely kicking out of a pinfall attempt. Sting dodged a clothesline, with Scott soaring over the top rope and landing on the commentary table where Jim Ross and Dusty Rhodes sat. Luger suplexed Scott into the ring, making the cover but only getting a 2 count. Rick struck at the right moment, diving off the top rope and taking down Luger with a bulldog. Sting leapt off the top rope, hitting Rick with a missile dropkick. Luger and Rick bounced off the ropes, eventually colliding to knock one another out. They each inched towards their respective corners and made the tag, with Sting and Scott racing at one another for battle. Scott attempted a tombstone, with Sting reversing it to hit one of his own. Rick broke up a pinfall attempt, with an angry Luger tackling him through the ropes and to the floor. Referee Randy Anderson was knocked out amidst the chaos. Sting hit Scott with a Stinger Splash, but didn't go for a Scorpion Deathlock. Nikita Koloff made his way down the ramp with a steel chain, sneaking up on Luger. Sting shoved Luger out of the way, with Koloff hitting the Stinger with a steel chain-assisted clothesline. Scott covered a bloody Sting and scored the pinfall victory. Backstage, Tony Schiavone interviewed Nikita Koloff, who said that Sting was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sting raced in, brawling with Koloff out of the building in a wild fight. Arn Anderson defended the World Television Championship against Beautiful Bobby Eaton in a hard-hitting match. Just when Eaton looked to have things under control, Anderson threw him off the top rope, face first onto the ramp. Anderson attempted a pile driver, with Eaton reversing it by backdropping Anderson on the ramp. Back in the ring, Anderson attacked the knee of Eaton. A spinebuster would soon follow, with the resilient Eaton kicking out of a pinfall attempt. Eaton climbed to the top rope, causing Barry Windham to run down the aisle. After Flying Brian Pillman chased Windham away, Eaton hit the Alabama Jam off the top rope onto Anderson and scored the pinfall victory. Beautiful Bobby Eaton was crowned the new World Television Champion. In the main event, World Heavyweight Champion the Nature Boy Ric Flair battled the IWGP Champion Tatsumi Fujinami to determine the undisputed World Heavyweight Champion. Fujinami received a grand entrance, led to the ring by a parade of geisha girls. Flair put his Rolex on a silver serving platter before walking the aisle surrounded by women. 2 officials were assigned to the match, with one standing on the floor to provide an extra eye. After a tense stare-down, a great technical wrestling bout ensued. Fujinami wrenched at the back of Flair in a surfboard submission, with the Nature Boy screaming in pain. A Boston Crab followed, with Flair screaming in agony. Flair tried to escape, with Fujinami suplexing him back into the ring. A flying forearm followed, sending Flair over the top rope and crashing to the floor. Fujinami followed, only for Flair to atomic drop him, crotch first onto a steel guardrail. Back in the ring, Flair locked Fujinami in the figure 4 leg lock. They chopped at one another until Fujinami reversed the hold. Flair broke the hold, allowing Fujinami to lock in the Scorpion Deathlock. After making it to the ropes to break the hold, Flair planted Fujinami with a belly-to-belly suplex. They battled to the floor, where Fujinami bashed Flair's face off a steel guardrail and a steel ring post to bust him open. Once back in the ring, Fujinami continued his dominance until a desperate Flair kicked him in the face. Flair climbed to the top rope, with Fujinami slamming him to the mat below. Fujinami locked in the octopus submission in the middle of the ring. Flair broke it, slamming Fujinami to the mat. The two battled back and forth until colliding in the middle of the ring, with the force sending both men tumbling out of the ring. Both men barely made it back into the ring, where Fujinami covered Flair, who kicked out at the last possible moment. Fujinami rolled up Flair, with the Nature Boy kicking out, sending Fujinami crashing into NJPW official Tiger Hattori. Flair rolled up Fujinami and hooked the tights, with WCW referee Bill Alfonso hopping in to make the 3 count. Alfonso raised the arm of Flair, presenting him with the championship to end a great bout. The May 25th edition of NWA Pro saw Larry Zbyszko interview Sting, who was furious at Nikita Koloff. Out came Koloff, saying that he didn't have a problem with Sting, but rather his partner, Lex Luger. Still, Koloff took down Sting with a Russian sickle. Sting chased after Koloff, with the two brawling through the curtain. The May 25th edition of World Championship Wrestling began with Paulie Dangerously finding out that the Danger Zone was cancelled. Instead, Missy Hyatt hosted her segment, Missy's Manor. Her guest was the debuting, stunning Steve Austin, who was joined by vivacious Veronica. Austin sported long blonde hair tied back in a ponytail, and he wore a sparkling red robe with Veronica holding the ropes open for him. Veronica took over the promo, saying that her and Austin's business is nobody's business. Austin said that when the time is right, they'll let their intentions be known. Jason Hervey introduced a new segment, The Bull Drop In, hosted by the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. The set was made up of bales of hay, with Rhodes having the tallest stack to sit on. Rhodes asked Hervey who would win, Nikita Koloff or the total package Lex Luger. Hervey chose Koloff, with the fans booing him. Rhodes disagreed and brought out his first guest, PN News. The American Dream said that News had more moves than a bowl of Jell-O. Rhodes asked if News would do a rap, with News singing away, ending with a yo baby, yo. The American Dream joined in, with Hervey dancing away in the background. The June 1st episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Dusty Rhodes host the Bull Drop In. Jason Hervey sat beside Rhodes, holding a one-man gang voodoo doll. Kevin Sullivan and the gang were the guests of Rhodes, with Hervey pushing pins in his voodoo doll. The gang would wail in pain every time Hervey pushed a pin into the doll. Just when Gang fell to the ground in pain, Rhodes noticed what Hervey was doing. Rhodes told him to cut it out, with Sullivan helping the gang away. The June 2nd edition of the main event saw Arn Anderson team with Terrence Taylor to face the World Television Champion Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Dustin Rhodes. Ricky Morton stood in the corner of Eaton and Rhodes, but trailed off to have a conversation with Alexandra York before making his exit from ringside. A hard-fought bout continued, ending with Rhodes rolling up Taylor in an inside cradle and scoring the pinfall victory. The June 8th episode of the Power Hour saw the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson battle the World Television Champion Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Big Josh. Most of the match saw Flair and Eaton brawling, with Eaton hitting the Alabama Jam off the top rope onto the Nature Boy. Anderson broke up a pinfall attempt and knocked Big Josh off the ring apron. Eaton got a hold of Josh's axe, using the handle to bash both Anderson and Flair to cause a disqualification. The June 8th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Missy Hyatt host Missy's Manor. Her guests were Theodore R. Long and the flamboyant Johnny B. Bad, who complimented Hyatt's perfume. Long promised Bad that he'd buy him the same fragrance. Dusty Rhodes hosted another edition of the Bull Drop Inn, with Jason Hervey sitting by his side. This week's guest was the enforcer Arn Anderson, with Rhodes asking him if he'd ever stop being an enforcer and take the opportunity to be World Heavyweight Champion. Anderson said that he's a moneymaker, insulted Hervey, and then abruptly ended the interview. Paulie dangerously interrupted, getting in the face of Hervey and asking what he's even doing there. Hervey responded by saying, "Anything I want." He further taunted Dangerously, who became irritated. Rhodes kicked Dangerously off the set before ending the show. A vignette aired in an old western town with three men in dark hats riding horses down an old dirt road. They were the Desperados, never showing their faces as they came to a stare-down with a single man who nervously clutched his pistol. Clash of the Champions 15 took place on June 14th and saw Paulie dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guest was Jason Hervey, with Dangerously asking questions but pulling away the microphone before Hervey could answer. Dangerously revealed that Hervey was dating Missy Hyatt, warning him to sign a prenuptial agreement. Hervey said, "How does it feel to get beat up by a girl?" Dangerously asked Hervey about his new car and new house, but asked why his girlfriend is used merchandise. This riled up Hervey, who ended the interview. As Hervey turned his back, Dangerously waffled him across the back of the head with his cell phone, which shattered into pieces. Missy Hyatt raced to the ring to check on Hervey, who was in a daze. Dustin Rhodes battled Terrence Taylor, who had Alexandra York and Mr. Hughes in his corner. Ricky Morton interfered, attacking Rhodes and joining the York Foundation. Big Josh raced to the ring with his axe handle, clearing the ring. Sting charged to the ring for his match against Nikita Koloff, kicking off their grudge match. Koloff dominated the majority of the match and looked to capitalize on Sting missing his Stinger Splash. Sting ducked a Russian sickle, with Koloff bouncing off the corner and right into a roll-up. The referee made the 3 count, with Sting declared the winner. Tony Schiavone interviewed PN News, who was accompanied by the rap group Salt and Pepper. After delivering an abysmal rap, News was interrupted by Johnny B. Bad and Theodore R. Long. Grabbing the microphone, Long insulted Salt and Pepper and said that News wasn't a rap master. Bad called News a big ugly bear, with News screaming back, insulted. This was enough to cause Bad and Long to retreat. Barry Windham and Arn Anderson battled Flyin' Brian Pillman and El Gigante, with the loser of the fall forced to leave WCW. Pillman shined in the early minutes, putting a beating on his opponents and diving over the shoulders of Gigante to hit a big splash onto Windham. The tides turned once Wyndham shoved Pillman off the top rope and crashing onto the canvas. Wyndham picked up a pinfall victory over Pillman, meaning that Flying Brian must leave WCW. The Steiner brothers defended the IWGP Tag Team Championships against Masahiro Chono and Hiroshi Hase. It was hard hitting from the start, evident when Chono kicked Rick Steiner so hard that it broke his headgear. Scott Steiner tagged in and hoisted Chono up onto his shoulder. Rick leaped off the top rope, dropping an elbow across the chest of Chono to knock him off of Scott's shoulders. It wasn't long before Chono had regained the advantage, with Hase joining in on the beatdown. Scott tagged in, taking down Hase with a Steiner line, followed by a tilt-a-whirl slam. He then planted Hase with a Tiger Bomb in the middle of the ring. Scott hit Hase with a big belly-to-belly suplex off the top rope. Hase shifted the momentum, hitting Scott with a Dragon Suplex, with Rick breaking the count. Just when it looked like Hase and Chono had the match won, Rick tripped up Chono and Scott hit Hase with a Frankensteiner. Scott covered Hase and scored the pinfall victory to retain the titles. The Hardliners, Dick Murdoch and Dirty Dick Slater, ambushed the Steiners, dishing out a vicious beatdown on the champions. Jim Ross interviewed a young kid that had won the Sting Look-alike contest. Out came Sting to congratulate his devoted fan, but trouble was ahead. Nikita Koloff wrapped a chain around his fist and ambushed Sting, battering him around ringside. Koloff began to walk towards the youngster, whose mother shielded him until security hit the scene. In the ring, Tony Schiavone interviewed the York Foundation, with Alexandra York introducing the newest member of the group, Richard Morton. Robert Gibson interrupted, asking what has gotten into Morton. In a shocking moment, Morton punched Gibson in the face and then drilled him with a pile driver. Dustin Rhodes raced in to clear the ring. In the main event, the Nature Boy Ric Flair defended the World Heavyweight Championship against the World Television Champion Beautiful Bobby Eaton in a 2 out of 3 falls match. The challenger put up a great effort, nailing the champion with an Alabama Jam to score the pinfall to win the first fall. In the second fall, Flair knocked Eaton to the floor, with the TV champion injuring his knee. Flair won the second fall by countout. Once back in the ring, Eaton nailed Flair with a superplex off the top rope. Eaton made the cover, with Flair barely kicking out. Soon after, Flair locked Eaton in a figure 4 leg lock, with the television champion passing out and the Nature Boy picking up the victory. The June 15th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured a vignette from the Desperados. Picking up where they left off last week, all 3 Desperados walked past a slow cowboy, arguing about meeting up with Stan Hansen. The group consisted of Dutch Mantel, Black Bart, and Dead-Eye Dick, who was portrayed by the former Moondog, Randy Colley. Mantel and Bart argued, while the deaf Dead-Eye Dick snuck off into a saloon. Dead-Eye Dick was kicked out of the saloon, where Mantel and Bart continued to argue. The Hardliners, Dick Murdoch and Dirty Dick Slater, cut a promo, saying they were coming after the gold of the Steiner brothers. Another Desperados vignette aired on the June 22nd episode of World Championship Wrestling, with the search continuing for Stan Hansen. Black Bart pulled out a pistol, showing Deadeye Dick how to shoot. Things went awry, with Dick accidentally shooting at Dutch Mantell. Black Bart was the voice of reason and taught Deadeye Dick the art of the quick draw. It turned out that Deadeye Dick was a natural, but the bullet shot off the hat of the sheriff. Bart and Mantell snuck into the jail to break Dick out, but accidentally got themselves locked inside the jail cell. The June 29th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured another vignette from the Desperados. They sat by the fire, discussing how important it was for them to compete at the Great American Bash. The July 6th episode of the Power Hour saw beautiful Bobby Eaton defend the World Television Championship against stunning Steve Austin. Eaton dominated and nailed his patented Alabama Jam. Lady Blossom entered the ring, screaming at Eaton, who shoved the referee aside. She clawed at the eyes of Eaton, allowing Austin to roll him up and pick up the pinfall victory. Steve Austin was crowned the new World Television Champion. The July 6th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured Jim Herd reading a statement. Herd announced that the Nature Boy Ric Flair failed to sign a new contract, and the World Heavyweight Championship was now vacant. A new champion would be determined at the Great American Bash. United States Champion Lex Luger would face an opponent chosen by the WCW Executive Committee. Later in the show, Herd announced that Luger would face Barry Windham to determine a new world champion. The July 13th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guest was the United States Champion Lex Luger, who hyped his upcoming World Heavyweight Championship match against Barry Windham. Luger said that he respects Windham, but he's focused on becoming the world champion. The Great American Bash took place on July 14th in Baltimore, Maryland. In the opening match, beautiful Bobby Eaton teamed with PN News to face the World Television Champion Stunning Steve Austin and Terrence Taylor in a Capture the Flag scaffold match. To win, you could either throw your opponents off the scaffold or capture the flag at the top of said scaffold. All four climbed to the top, inching towards one another at a snail's pace. They battled cautiously in an unexciting bout that saw Eaton capture the flag for the victory. Austin used Lady Blossom's hairspray to blind both Eaton and News. All four climbed down, fighting into the ring, with Eaton and News left standing tall. Former tag team partners collided as Richard Morton faced Robert Gibson, with the two brawling on the ramp before the official start of the bout. Gibson pummeled his former partner, with Morton retreating to the floor for advice from his manager, Alexandra York. Morton gained the advantage by attacking the previously injured knee of Gibson. Ripping at the tights of his former partner, Morton ripped at Gibson's knee brace and inflicted more damage. Morton locked Gibson in a figure 4 leg lock, with Gibson battling through the pain and reversing the hold. With the hold soon broken, Morton continued to attack the knee of Gibson mercilessly. Gibson fought back valiantly, striking Morton with an enziguri. On the ramp, both men attempted dropkicks, unsuccessful. York distracted the referee, allowing Morton to use her computer to bash Gibson. This was enough for Morton to score the pinfall victory. Eric Bischoff made his debut as a backstage correspondent, interviewing Dusty Rhodes and the Young Pistols in preparation for their upcoming six-man tag match. Later, Bischoff stumbled into Missy Hyatt's dressing room, where she was showering. Hyatt screamed at Bischoff, calling him a peeping Tom. The masked yellow dog made his way to the ring, with a yellow Labrador Retriever by his side for his match against Johnny B. Bad, who was accompanied by Theodore R. Long. On commentary, Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone questioned whether or not the yellow dog was actually Flying Brian Pillman. An argument could certainly be made, with the yellow dog fighting with the same passion as Pillman. Sensing defeat, Long attacked the dog to cause a disqualification. The dog retaliated by taking down Long with Air Pillman. Bad knocked down the dog with a vicious right hand and then checked in on Long. Sting battled Nikita Koloff in a Russian chain match, where the winner must drag their opponent around the ring and touch all four corners. They brutalized one another with the chain, and each touched three corners en route to the final turnbuckle. Sting charged at Koloff with a Stinger Splash, knocking him into the final corner. Koloff was declared the winner, with the two continuing to brawl after the bout. The United States champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, faced Barry Windham in a steel cage match to determine the new World Heavyweight Champion. The match was riddled with "We Want Flair" chants as Luger and Windham battled back and forth inside the cage. Harley Race marched down the ramp, backed by Mr. Hughes. Race said, "Now's the time." Luger spiked Windham with a race-like piledriver and scored the pinfall victory to become the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion. In the main event, Paulie Dangerously and Arn Anderson faced Missy Hyatt and Rick Steiner inside of a steel cage. The Hardliners carried Hyatt away before the start, leaving Rick alone in the cage with Anderson and Dangerously. Rick struck Anderson with a Steiner line, following it up by laying out Dangerously with an even more vicious Steiner line to score a pinfall victory. The July 20th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured footage from backstage at the Great American Bash. Eric Bischoff interviewed the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, who was backed by Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. With photographers taking pictures, Luger said, "The past has been forgotten. New history is being made." The new champion said he was putting everyone on notice and said that he's finally arrived. Race said, "The Total Package is all together." Gordon Solie announced that Scott Steiner was injured and the Steiner brothers were stripped of the World Tag Team Championships. A tournament would be held to crown a new set of champions. The July 27th edition of WCW Pro saw the World Television Champion Stunning Steve Austin face the Yellow Dog. A competitive bout ensued, with Lady Blossom interfering behind the referee's back to give him an unfair advantage. The Yellow Dog battled back, pushing Austin to the limit as the clock ticked down. Blossom tripped up the dog, with Austin looming in for the finish. The dog caught Austin off guard with a crucifix pin attempt, with the time limit expiring before the referee could make the 3 count. The Diamond Stud ambushed the Yellow Dog and ripped off his mask. As the dog shielded his face, the Z-Man Tom Zink raced in for the save. The July 27th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw the Enforcers, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, win an enhancement match. Following the bout, Jim Ross interviewed the Enforcers, with Zbyszko calling them the last real men. Anderson said that in professional wrestling, the winner is the one who ends up with the most toys. He said that they were coming for all the gold. In the WCW Control Center, Gordon Solie announced that a tournament would be held to crown a new United States champion. Paulie Dangerously interviewed the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, who was backed by Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. Luger said that he's been in the driver's seat since day one, and all he needed was Race to tell him to take what he wants by the throat. The Yellow Dog competed against the Diamond Stud, who was accompanied by Diamond Dallas Page. With the referee distracted, the Stud ripped off the mask of the Dog. The Z-Man Tom Zink raced in, giving the shirt off his back to the Dog to cover his face. Just when the Stud punched Zink, he was rolled up by the Dog, who scored the pinfall victory. The August 3rd edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously interview the World Television Champion, Stunning Steve Austin, and Lady Blossom. While Austin talked about his recent success, Blossom paid more attention to her new earrings. An annoyed Austin asked where she'd gotten them from, with Blossom revealing that they were a gift from Johnny B. Bad. Austin said that if anybody would buy her anything, he'd buy it for her, before throwing the earrings aside. The August 10th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured a promo from the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger. Backed by Harley Race and Mr. Hughes, Luger addressed his top two contenders, Barry Windham and Ron Simmons. The champion didn't seem intimidated, confident he'd defeat either one with ease. After winning an enhancement match, Ron Simmons was interviewed by Paulie Dangerously. Simmons stated his intentions of becoming the first African-American World Heavyweight Champion. Harley Race interrupted, backed by Mr. Hughes. Race said that Simmons wasn't in the same league as the Total Package. Simmons was confident, getting in the face of Hughes and telling Race he was coming for Luger's gold. The August 17th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured footage of Ron Simmons in the ring, telling Harley Race that he wants a shot at Lex Luger's World Heavyweight Championship. Out came Luger, who didn't back down from Simmons. Suddenly, Mr. Hughes ambushed Simmons, with a 3-on-1 beatdown ensuing. Barry Windham saved the day, with the champion and his entourage retreating. Later, Windham cut a promo, saying that he wasn't going to let Luger outsmart him. Out came Luger, distracting Windham to allow Harley Race to sneak in and clobber Windham from behind. Race held up a defenseless Windham, with Luger connecting with a lariat. Ron Simmons raced in with a steel chair to send the champion and his entourage retreating. Simmons and Windham shook hands, uniting over the same hatred over Luger. Making his return, Cactus Jack brutalized his opponent in an enhancement match. Cactus dove off the ring apron, hitting an elbow drop onto his opponent on the concrete floor. After rolling his opponent into the ring, Cactus picked up a pinfall victory. Paulie Dangerously interviewed the World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger and Harley Race, who had harsh words for Ron Simmons. Race said that Simmons is playing with fire, while Luger said that the recent beatdown he unleashed on Simmons is only a sign of things to come. Stunning Steve Austin defended the World Television Championship against the natural Dustin Rhodes. The two Texans battled in a highly competitive match. Lady Blossom entered the ring, helping Austin to his feet. Rhodes hit a dropkick, with Austin accidentally knocking over Blossom. This allowed Rhodes to hit Austin with a bulldog and make the cover. Lady Blossom broke the count and clawed at the eyes of Rhodes to cause a disqualification. Austin and Blossom retreated, with Rhodes left standing tall. The August 24th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured a promo from Cactus Jack. He said, "As long as I'm here, there's gonna be a lot of people hurt. A lot of people hurt, and it could be you. So wake up and read the writing on the wall." Footage aired of Sting opening up a giant present wrapped in white paper, allegedly sent by his adoring fans. Out of the box popped Abdullah the Butcher, who battered Sting around ringside. From the control center, Paulie dangerously revealed that Flying Brian Pillman had been reinstated. The Clash of the Champions, Fall Brawl, took place on September 5th, beginning with the Georgia Brawl Battle Royal, won by El Gigante. In the semi-final match in the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship Tournament, Flying Brian Pillman battled Bad Street, who was accompanied by the Fabulous Freebirds. A high-flying bout ensued at a rapid pace, even seeing Bad Street suplex Pillman over the top rope into the concrete floor. Pillman retaliated with a scary dive that saw him crash onto a steel guardrail face first, also taking out Bad Street. Back in the ring, Pillman attempted a missile dropkick off the top rope. He was met with a dropkick from Bad Street, with both men crashing to the mat. The two traded pinfall attempts until Pillman nailed a high cross body off the top rope, pinning Bad Street for the victory. The new United States champion, Sting, defended his title against Johnny B. Bad, who was accompanied by Theodore R. Long. During the bout, another giant box was delivered on the ramp, addressed to Sting. Distracted, Bad got rolled up by Sting with an inside cradle, with the Stinger scoring a pinfall victory. Cactus Jack burst out of the box and ambushed Sting. He hit an elbow drop off the second rope onto Sting on the concrete floor. Back in the ring, Cactus spiked Sting with a double-arm DDT. In the ring, Eric Bischoff introduced the world's strongest man, Bill Kazmaier, who was attempting to set a Guinness World Record by bending a 3/4-inch steel rod around his neck. While Kazmaier was successful, he was ambushed by the enforcers. Arn Anderson bashed Kazmaier with a 45-pound weight, crushing his ribs. Rick Steiner came to Kazmaier's aid, but the damage was already done. Paulie dangerously interviewed Cactus Jack, who bragged that he ended the career of Sting. Another box was delivered to the stage, with Cactus saying that it was Abdullah the Butcher, and he wanted to give him a hug. As Cactus approached, Sting burst out of the box, attacking Cactus and backdropping him off the ramp. Sting then hip-tossed Cactus off the ramp and crashing onto the concrete floor. Cactus got up and tossed a garbage can at Sting before referees separated the two. Footage aired of Ron Simmons having his football jersey, number 50, retired from Florida State. His former coach, Bobby Bowden, delivered a message from his office. Bowden wished Simmons luck in his upcoming World Heavyweight Championship match at Halloween Havoc against Lex Luger. Paulie dangerously interviewed Ron Simmons, who called out the World Heavyweight Champion, Lex Luger. Out came Harley Race and Mr. Hughes, with Simmons saying he was going to go find Luger. Carrying a Flying V guitar to the ring, Van Hammer made his debut, defeating Terrence Taylor. Missy Hyatt stood in the dressing room of Lex Luger, prepared for an interview. Ron Simmons walked in, demanding to have words with Luger. The champion said that he was done talking and pie-faced Simmons out of the room. Simmons barged back in, with wrestlers restraining him from getting his hands on Luger. Footage aired of Ron Simmons at a school delivering a motivational speech to children. Simmons urged them all to set goals, believe in themselves, and never give up. More footage was shown, with Simmons riding on a bus with children he'd purchased tickets for to attend a WCW event. Eric Bischoff moderated a contract signing between Ron Simmons and the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger. Backed by his wife and Dusty Rhodes, Simmons signed the contract. Harley Race looked over the contract, with Luger signing soon after. Luger was condescending and said that after he retains, Simmons can drive his limo. Simmons jumped over the table to attack Luger, with security prying the two apart. Luger was whisked into a limo by Mr. Hughes, with Simmons left banging on the windows before they drove away. In the main event, the Enforcers, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, faced Rick Steiner and an injured Bill Kazmaier to crown new World Tag Team Champions. Kazmaier hoisted Zbyszko high over his head with a military press until Anderson punched the ribs of Kazmaier. Zbyszko made the cover, getting the 3 count, with the Enforcers crowned the new Tag Team Champions. The September 7th episode of World Championship Wrestling began with the Patriots, Todd Champion and Firebreaker Chip, defeating the Fabulous Freebirds to become the new United States Tag Team Champions in a huge upset. The new World Tag Team Champions, the Enforcers, cut a promo, with Larry Zbyszko calling them the last real men on the planet. Arn Anderson said that they stayed to their game plan and took a beating, but they proved that they were the better men. The World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger ambushed Barry Windham, with Harley Race and Mr. Hughes joining in on the beatdown. Luger bounced Windham's face repeatedly off the concrete floor. Ron Simmons raced to the scene, fighting off Luger, Race, and Hughes to save Windham from further punishment. Paulie dangerously interviewed the United States Champion, Sting, interrupted by a third box delivered to the ring. Leery, Sting tore into the box, with a blonde woman walking out. After kissing Sting, she presented him with a note from Cactus Jack, who said that he can't wait to get his hands on the Stinger. Unfazed, Sting said he wasn't a hard man to find. He went on to kiss the woman and end the interview. The September 14th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie dangerously host the Danger Zone. His guests were the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, Harley Race, and Mr. Hughes. They were quickly interrupted by Ron Simmons and Barry Windham, with chaos ensuing. Simmons pounded on Luger, with Hughes using Dangerously's phone to save the champion. Race held Simmons in place, with Luger using a steel chair to smash the back of the #1 contender. Highlights aired from the United States Championship tournament that recently took place at the Omni. Immediately after defeating the Diamond Stud, Sting advanced to the finals to face Stunning Steve Austin. With the Stinger worn down, Austin dominated the majority of the bout. Austin hit Sting with the stun gun, but chose to hug Lady Blossom instead of going for the cover. Sting reversed a tombstone, planting Austin in the middle of the ring. Austin recovered, rolling up Sting and hooking the tights. Sting reversed it and scored the 3 count to win the United States Championship. Cactus Jack cut a promo about his recent altercations with the United States Champion, Sting. He said, "You want to play mind games? You don't even know the rules." Cactus said that Sting was going to be in a living hell and offered to be his tour guide. He said that somebody was paying him a lot of money to take out Sting. Cactus called himself a walking, talking pain machine. The September 21st edition of World Championship Wrestling saw the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, confront the Z-Man Tom Zink for comments he'd made. Zink had said that Luger was a changed man that turned his back on his friends. Luger said that he was going to prove Zink wrong, only to spike him with a pile driver. Barry Windham battled Mr. Hughes, who had Harley Race in his corner. Hughes pummeled Windham bloody, with Race getting cheap shots in behind the referee's back. Windham battled back, power slamming Hughes and knocking him to the floor by hitting a lariat from the top rope. Race was knocked off the ring apron by a right hand from Windham. Outside the ring, Windham attempted to drive the face of Race against the concrete floor. Stopping him was the World Heavyweight Champion, Lex Luger, who smashed Windham across the back with a steel chair to cause a disqualification. After the match, Luger bashed Windham over the head with the chair. Before the end of the broadcast, Barry Windham marched to the ring and called out Lex Luger. Mr. Hughes ambushed Windham, with an arrogant Luger looking on from a distance. The September 22nd edition of the main event saw Paulie Dangerously host the Danger Zone. Dangerously introduced footage from the Omni, where Lex Luger had just retained his World Heavyweight Championship in a match against Ron Simmons. Barry Windham informed referee Bill Alfonso of the interference from Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. Suddenly, Hughes ambushed Windham, leading to a 3-on-1 beatdown. Windham was rendered a bloody mess. Back in the studio, Dangerously introduced Simmons and Windham, who talked trash about Luger, Race, and Hughes. The September 28th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously interview the World Tag Team Champions, the Enforcers. Arn Anderson said, "While each and every person tries to figure out a grand way to enter the ring, we have figured out the way to enter, succeed, and then leave. You may not call it flamboyance, but I call it being a winner." Jim Ross interviewed Barry Windham, who said that Lex Luger was afraid of losing the World Heavyweight Championship. Windham said that Luger didn't deserve the title and predicted that Ron Simmons would be successful at Halloween Havoc. Jim Ross interviewed Cactus Jack, who had Abdullah the Butcher eating his hair. Cactus told Ross not to worry about who's paying them, but instead worry about who's next. He had a message for Sting, saying, "When that elbow drops and you feel that lump in your throat, don't be deceived. It's not emotion, it's your liver." Flying Brian Pillman battled Richard Morton, who was accompanied by the York Foundation. Thomas Rich switched places with Morton, only for Pillman to roll him up with an inside cradle and pick up a pinfall victory. All 3 members of the York Foundation ambushed Pillman, unleashing a brutal assault. The October 5th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Paulie Dangerously interview Cactus Jack and Abdullah the Butcher. Cactus said that he didn't mean to scare all of the little stingers and wanted to make it up to them. Abdullah tore into a giant box, pulling out a cake with a WCW Galoob Sting action figure on top. As Cactus sang happy birthday to Sting, Abdullah used the Sting action figure to eat the cake. Dangerously informed Cactus that it wasn't Sting's birthday, with Cactus saying he wasn't here for Sting's last birthday. Cactus said that Sting's last birthday was his actual last birthday. The October 12th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured footage of Ron Simmons training on the football field at Florida State. Simmons was then shown in the weight room, preparing for his upcoming world title shot at Halloween Havoc. The world premiere of Van Hammer's music video, Heavy Metal, aired. Hammer shredded on guitar, backed by a full rock band. He was also shown riding his motorcycle down a dirt road, as well as entering a wrestling arena and allowing fans to join him backstage. Hammer jumped off the top rope with guitar in hand, while pyro ignited in the background to end the music video. Future ECW wrestler Axel Rotten made his debut, billed from Manchester, England. He competed in an enhancement match, defeating Joey Maggs. The October 19th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview Sting, who sarcastically asked why Cactus Jack didn't invite him to his own birthday party. Sting said that he was planning a big party for Cactus Jack and Abdullah the Butcher inside the Chamber of Horrors at Halloween Havoc. Medusa made her in-ring debut, defeating Leilani Kai in impressive fashion with a German suplex. At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed Ron Simmons, who hyped his upcoming World Heavyweight Championship match against the Total Package Lex Luger. Simmons talked about playing college football with Luger, with Simmons being a defensive guard, while Luger was an offensive guard. The challenger said that when he defeats Luger, people of all races will celebrate his championship win together. Ross read late-breaking news saying that Mr. Hughes would be barred from ringside. Simmons revealed the man that would be in his corner with a manager's license, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. After Simmons left, an irate Harley Race marched out, backed by Mr. Hughes. Race screamed into the microphone, "What's going on here?" Cactus Jack battled Bill Kazmaier, with Abdullah the Butcher interfering to cause a disqualification. Abdullah whacked Kazmaier repeatedly across the back with a kendo stick, with Sting racing in to the rescue. Sting cracked both Abdullah and Cactus repeatedly with the kendo stick to clear the ring. Halloween Havoc took place on October 27th and featured footage from earlier in the day, with Eric Bischoff standing outside the UTC arena. Cactus Jack drove up dressed in a suit, with Abdullah the Butcher in the passenger seat smoking a cigar and wearing a button-down shirt and tie. Pulling up soon after was Barry Windham, with his partner Dustin Rhodes in the passenger seat. The World Tag Team Champions, the Enforcers, rushed the car, with Larry Zbyszko holding Windham still, and Arn Anderson slamming the car door on his arm. As the champions scurried away, Rhodes took the wheel, saying he was taking Windham to the hospital. The Chamber of Horrors kicked off the show, with the object being to put a member of the opposing team in the Chamber of Horrors chair of torture and pull the fatal lever. One team consisted of El Gigante, the Steiner Brothers, and the United States Champion, Sting. Team 2 consisted of Big Van Vader, the Diamond Stud, Abdullah the Butcher, and Cactus Jack, who made his entrance revving a chainsaw. The action was out of control, with wrestlers battling on the ramp and inside the cage. While the madness ensued, we caught a glimpse of the referee cam, which was a camera mounted on a helmet and worn by the referee to provide a unique angle of the action. A casket was propped up in one corner, with a masked man popping out and Scott Steiner decimating him. Sting launched himself over the top rope, crashing onto Vader on the floor. The chair of torture lowered from the ceiling, with Vader and Rick Steiner brawling over it. 10 ghouls staggered down the ramp carrying a stretcher to add to the calamity. Sting dropped a coffin lid on the head of Cactus, rendering him a bloody mess. Abdullah climbed up the cage, with Scott wrapping a steel chain around his neck and dragging him down to the floor. The Diamond Stud put Sting in the chair, with a chain-wielding Scott making the save. On the floor, Rick used a kendo stick to bloody Abdullah. The Diamond Stud put Scott in the chair, but was soon struck below the belt by a kendo stick, courtesy of Rick. Moments later, Rick found himself in the chair, with Scott swinging a kendo stick around to make the save. Rick was again forced into the chair, with Abdullah choking the life out of him, while a bloody Cactus guarded the lever. The momentum shifted, and Rick hit Abdullah with a belly-to-belly suplex into the chair. Rick strapped Abdullah's arms in, and crowned him with a headpiece. Unaware of the switch, Cactus pulled the lever, with sparks shooting from the chair, and Abdullah seemingly electrocuted. Explosions went off, with the referee stomping out several fires, while a blood-covered Abdullah convulsed in the chair. The steel cage was raised, with a concerned Cactus freeing Abdullah from the chair. Cactus squealed frantically in the face of Abdullah, whose eyes shot open. Abdullah lunged from the chair, tackling Cactus down and attacking the ghouls in the aisle. Dustin Rhodes battled the World Television Champion, Stunning Steve Austin, who was accompanied by Lady Blossom. Dustin's grandmother watched from the crowd, cheering on her grandson. Austin was vicious, striking Dustin repeatedly with bare knuckles to bust him open. A bloody Dustin staggered around ringside, with Austin crashing onto him with a double axe handle off the top rope. Back in the ring, Dustin battled back, with multiple pinfall attempts ensuing. Lady Blossom got involved, striking Dustin repeatedly behind the referee's back. Dustin took down Austin with a big power slam, with the champion barely kicking out of a pinfall attempt. The champion was soon a bloody mess, with Dustin punching him repeatedly to open the cut further on Austin's forehead. Dustin nailed the champion with a bionic elbow, with Austin barely kicking out. With the clock counting down, Dustin was frantic for a pin. Dustin leaped off the top rope, striking Austin with a flying clothesline, and made the cover. Before the referee could make a 3 count, the time limit expired. Flying Brian Pillman battled Richard Morton to determine the first ever WCW Light Heavyweight Champion. In the end, Pillman crashed onto Morton with a high cross body and picked up a pinfall victory. Pillman was crowned the first Light Heavyweight Champion. The Z-Man Tom Zink was in action against the masked WCW Phantom, who made an impressive debut. After a ruthless beatdown, the Phantom finished the match by nailing Zink with a neckbreaker and scoring the pinfall victory. Dressed as Dracula, Eric Bischoff interviewed Paulie Dangerously, who was accompanied by Medusa. Dangerously said that WCW officials find him to be too controversial and therefore is no longer a co-host on World Championship Wrestling. He said, "This means war." Dangerously revealed that he's obtained a manager's license and his goal is to bankrupt WCW. He said that he's starting at the top with Sting. Dangerously said that he asked Medusa to find him the man to take down Sting. He introduced the WCW Phantom, with Dangerously saying that this man will take out every person that has ever crossed him. Dangerously said, "Rest in peace, Stinger, your career's over." Taking off his mask, the Phantom revealed himself to be Ravishing Rick Rude. He said, "Anybody who knows Ravishing Rick Rude knows that all I care about is myself, my woman, and my money." Since the WCW committee has a problem with Rude's money man, Rude said he would help Dangerously tear down WCW brick by brick. Rude said that he was coming for Sting's United States Championship. In the main event, the Total Package Lex Luger defended the World Heavyweight Championship against the All-American Ron Simmons in a 2 out of 3 falls match. The American Dream Dusty Rhodes accompanied Simmons, while Luger was accompanied by Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. Prior to the start, Mr. Hughes was banished from ringside per the stipulations set. In mere minutes, Simmons took down Luger with a power slam, followed by a spinebuster to pick up a pinfall and win the first fall. The second fall saw Simmons charge at Luger, who moved, with the challenger crashing to the floor. Luger began to wear down Simmons, but the challenger wouldn't lay down. Race interfered, tripping up Simmons. This caused Rhodes to attack Race at ringside. Back in the ring, Luger charged at Simmons with a crossbody. Race put his hand up to prevent Simmons from falling over the top rope, while the champion crashed to the concrete floor. This caused the referee to think that Simmons tossed Luger over the top rope, thus causing a disqualification to tie things up. In the third fall, Luger came alive at the sight of his own blood, with a cut opening over his right eye. Simmons battled back and superplexed Luger off the top rope and crashing to the canvas. He made the cover, with Luger barely kicking out. Simmons leaped off the second rope, crashing against Luger with a flying shoulder tackle. The champion rolled to the floor, with Simmons chasing after him. Simmons went down for a 3-point stance and charged at Luger, who moved, with Simmons colliding with a ring post. Back in the ring, Luger spiked Simmons with a pile driver and scored a pinfall victory to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. The November 2nd episode of World Championship Wrestling saw the debut of the masked Arachnaman, who faced Doug Summers. Arachnaman wore a purple and gold Spider-Man bodysuit, using high-flying maneuvers to get the best of Summers and score a pinfall victory. Medusa battled Bambi in a hard-fought bout. In the end, Medusa hit Bambi with a German suplex and scored the pinfall victory. The November 3rd edition of the main event saw the 6-man tag team champions Dustin Rhodes, the Z-Man Tom Zink, and Big Josh face the York Foundation, Terrence Taylor, Richard Morton, and Thomas Rich. Big Josh wanted to believe that his old friend Rich had only made a mistake by joining the York Foundation, but soon found out that Rich had really changed. Later in the bout, Taylor attempted to pin Josh with his feet on the ropes. After the official scolded Taylor, Josh rolled his opponent up, hooking his feet on the ropes to aid in picking up the pinfall victory. The November 9th episode of World Championship Wrestling featured footage of Tony Schiavone interviewing Rick Steiner. World Heavyweight Champion The Total Package Lex Luger interrupted, asking Rick to leave, and then patted him on top of the head. Rick became irritated, saying he could beat Luger. The champion felt disrespected and challenged Rick to face him in the ring. The two collided, with Luger attempting a pile driver he called the Attitude Adjustment. Rick backdropped his way out of the hold and eventually German suplexed the champion. A belly-to-belly suplex followed, with Mr. Hughes running in to save the champion. Rick knocked Hughes to the mat with a Steiner line and then suplexed Harley Race into the ring. He then pinned the champion, getting the 3 count to win the impromptu match. The November 10th edition of the main event saw the 6-man tag team champions Dustin Rhodes, the Z-Man Tom Zink, and Big Josh battle the York Foundation in a rematch. All 6 brawled, with the action getting out of hand. Thomas Rich held up Big Josh, while Terrence Taylor got a hold of Alexandra York's computer. Taylor swung the computer, with Josh ducking and Rich getting knocked out. Josh showed compassion for his former friend Rich, who was now bloody. This allowed Taylor to smash Josh over the back of the head with the laptop. Rich covered Big Josh, picking up the pinfall victory. The York Foundation were crowned the new 6-man tag team champions. The November 16th episode of WCW Pro saw the 6-man tag team champions, the York Foundation, battle Dustin Rhodes, the Z-Man Tom Zink, and Big Josh in a non-title steel cage match. Things broke down, with all 6 battling it out. Terrence Taylor hoisted Josh up for a suplex, with Dustin Rhodes drop-kicking the ribs of Taylor. Josh scored the 3 count on Taylor to win the match for his team. The York Foundation ambushed the winners, bloodying Big Josh before leaving the ring. The November 16th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview Dustin Rhodes at ringside. Arn Anderson interrupted, saying Barry Windham was gone, and he's offering Dustin the chance to walk away. Dustin challenged Anderson to face him in the ring. Anderson said, "Nothing in this world is free," before walking away. Dustin said he'd have a partner to face the Enforcers at the Clash of the Champions. At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed Ravishing Rick Rude and Paulie Dangerously. Hogging the microphone, Dangerously said that he intended to bankrupt WCW and become the head of the WCW Board of Directors. He said, "You might as well call me Paulie Turner." Dangerously predicted that Rude would win the United States Championship at the Clash of the Champions. Rude said that Sting was a great competitor, but said, "That makes 2 of us." He said, "When the Clash is all over and the final bell has rung, the whole world will see it was Sting that was stung." At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed the United States champion Sting, who said that at the Clash of the Champions, we'd find out who was really behind sending him all those boxes. Sting talked about his upcoming match against Rick Rude, only to be interrupted by Medusa. She predicted defeat for the Stinger at the Clash. The Clash of the Champions 17 took place on November 19th from Savannah, Georgia. Tony Schiavone interviewed the United States champion Sting on the ramp. Suddenly, a dozen men in Speedos carried an extravagant purple and gold box. Out came Medusa, who slithered her hands all over Sting in an attempt to seduce him. From behind, the World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger emerged from the box, clipping the knee of Sting. As Jim Ross on commentary screamed that it was Luger that had been sending the boxes, the World Champion mercilessly attacked the knee of Sting. Members of the locker room raced to Sting's aid, with Luger and Medusa retreating. While the show continued, Sting was loaded into an ambulance and taken to a local medical facility. Eric Bischoff called in from the medical facility, revealing to Ross that Sting was being examined by an orthopedic surgeon. Bischoff said that a nurse gave him a thumbs up, hopefully meaning that the injury wasn't as severe as initially expected. The WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Enforcers, came to the ring to defend their titles against Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham. Unfortunately, Windham revealed that he was unable to compete, but revealed a mystery partner. Out came someone wearing a giant green dragon costume. Dustin tore the disguise to reveal the returning Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. A hard-hitting bout ensued, with the crowd cheering wildly for Steamboat and Rhodes. In the end, Steamboat soared off the top rope, taking down Anderson with a high cross body to pick up a pinfall victory. Steamboat and Rhodes were crowned the new World Tag Team Champions. Jim Ross interviewed Paulie Dangerously, who read from the contract for the match between Sting and Ravishing Rick Rude. Dangerously said that if Sting can't make it to the ring by bell time, Rude would be crowned the new United States Champion. Jim Ross spoke to Eric Bischoff on the phone, with Sting irate at the loophole in the contract. Sting commandeered an ambulance just as the phone cut out. Paulie Dangerously accompanied Ravishing Rick Rude to the ring for the United States Championship match. Just as Dangerously said that Sting had let down all of the Stingers, the cameras showed an ambulance speeding to the arena. Sting hobbled out, with members of the locker room leading Sting to the ramp. Rude raced after Sting, with the Stinger press slamming his opponent on the ramp. They battled back into the ring, where Rude gained control. Rude got a hold of Sting's injured knee and rammed it against a steel ring post. Back in the ring, Sting managed to power out of a rude awakening. Behind the referee's back, Dangerously smashed his phone over the back of Sting's head. Rude made the cover, with Sting kicking out. Just when Sting showed signs of hope, Rude clipped the injured knee. Rude rolled up Sting, hooking the tights to pick up a pinfall victory. Ravishing Rick Rude was crowned the new United States Champion. Backstage, Tony Schiavone interviewed Rude, Dangerously, and Medusa, who celebrated a big victory. Dangerous said that the Dangerous Alliance calls all the shots. Rude said that the hopes and prayers of the Stingers have died. The new United States Champion said, "Nice guys finish last," and blew a kiss into the camera. In the main event, Rick Steiner came to the ring with his brother Scott to battle the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger, who was accompanied by Harley Race and Mr. Hughes. Rick put up a great fight, battering the champion around with ease. The challenger hit the champion with a belly-to-belly suplex off the second rope and crashing to the mat below. Mr. Hughes tried to interfere, with Scott backdropping him into the ring and nailing a Frankensteiner. Race hopped onto the ring apron, with Rick suplexing him into the ring. As the referee attended to Race, Luger cracked Rick over the head with the World Heavyweight Championship. Luger made the cover and scored the pinfall victory to retain his title. The November 23rd edition of the Power Hour saw Sting battle Cactus Jack in a submit or surrender match. Cactus charged at Sting, who moved, with Cactus tumbling over the top rope into the concrete floor. Sting battered Cactus around ringside and attempted a suplex onto a garbage can. Cactus blocked it and shoved Sting against a steel guardrail. With the garbage can in hand, Cactus smashed Sting repeatedly until the Stinger back suplexed him onto the garbage can. Back in the ring, Sting bashed Cactus repeatedly with the garbage can. Sting buried Cactus in the garbage can, hitting an elbow drop onto it. Diving off the top rope, Sting crushed Cactus with a big splash. Cactus gained the advantage when Sting missed a leapfrog. Taking the fight to the floor, Cactus pulled a steel chair away from a fan and bashed Sting with it. Cactus continued his assault in the ring and spiked Sting with a double-arm DDT. Sting beat the count and backdropped Cactus over the top rope. The Stinger dove over the top rope, crashing onto Cactus on the floor. Sting suplexed Cactus on the concrete floor before rolling him back into the ring. Cactus dodged a Stinger splash, with Sting climbing to the second rope and leaping off. This failed, with Cactus catching Sting and dropping him throat first across the top rope. Cactus dragged Sting around the ring and set him up in the aisle. He ran off the ring apron, hitting an elbow drop onto Sting on the concrete floor. Cactus grabbed a microphone and told Sting to quit, shoving the microphone in his face. Sting said, "Not a chance." Cactus swung a chair at the head of Sting, who moved. The chair bounced off the ropes and smashed against the face of Cactus. Sting backdropped Cactus off the apron and crashing hard onto the concrete floor. With Cactus knocked out, Sting locked in the Scorpion Deathlock on the floor. The referee called for the bell, with Sting declared the winner. The November 23rd episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw the World Television Champion Stunning Steve Austin and Arn Anderson face beautiful Bobby Eaton and the natural Dustin Rhodes. Dustin fought hard, while Eaton avoided making the tag, with reality soon setting in. Once Eaton tagged in, he tried desperately to tag out, with an exhausted Dustin resting on the apron. A frustrated Eaton lifted Dustin up and hit him with a shoulder breaker. Austin made the cover, scoring the 3 count on Dustin. The November 23rd episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview newcomer Marcus Alexander Bagwell, who discussed his football career. Bagwell said he's always been a wrestling fan and has begun his training with Mike Graham and Dustin Rhodes. He said he should be ready to compete in a few weeks' time. At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed Paul E. Dangerously, Ravishing Rick Rude, and Medusa. Dangerously introduced the newest members of the Dangerous Alliance, the Enforcers, Arn Anderson, and Larry Zbyszko. Also joining the group was the World Television Champion Stunning Steve Austin and beautiful Bobby Eaton. The Dangerous Alliance was in full force. Out came the World Tag Team Champions Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Dustin Rhodes, who weren't intimidated by the threats of the Dangerous Alliance. The November 30th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Flyin' Brian Pillman battle Cactus Jack. They battled back and forth, with the action soon spilling to the floor. Pillman dove off an overhang, hitting a flying clothesline on Cactus on the floor. On the apron, Pillman attempted to suplex Cactus back into the ring. Cactus reversed it, suplexing Pillman over the top rope into the concrete floor. Pillman climbed onto the apron, with Cactus colliding into him with a running knee that sent Pillman crashing against a steel guardrail. Back in the ring, Cactus leaped off the top rope, only for Pillman to connect with a dropkick to the face. Pillman climbed to the top rope, with Cactus shaking the ropes to send Pillman crashing to the floor. Cactus ran off the ring apron, landing on Pillman with a flying elbow drop. The two battled on the apron, with the referee trying to break things up. Van Hammer interfered, using his Flying V guitar to shove Cactus and allow Pillman to score the pinfall victory. The show featured a sit-down interview Jim Ross conducted with Sting in an empty arena. Sting gave a status update on his knee, saying he'll be back at 100%. He accepted defeat, but said that Rick Rude has yet to face him at 100%. Sting said that it hurt to lose a good friend in Lex Luger, but first he wants to get his United States Championship back. The December 7th edition of World Championship Wrestling featured footage from Thanksgiving night in the Omni. Ravishing Rick Rude defended the United States Championship against Sting. Breaking out of the Rude Awakening, Sting hit Rude with his own finisher. Sting hit the Stinger Splash and locked in the Scorpion Deathlock. Paulie dangerously distracted the referee, allowing Medusa to interfere, kicking Sting across the chest. Sting press slammed Rude over the top rope and crashing onto the concrete floor. In an amazing feat, Sting ran across the ring, leaping over the top rope to crash onto Rude on the floor below. Dangerously tried to interfere, with Sting dragging him into the ring. Medusa leapt off the top rope, with Sting catching her in midair. This allowed Rude to attack the knee of Sting, with the referee calling for a disqualification due to outside interference. Dangerously held down Sting, with Rude attacking the injured knee with a steel chair. Wrestlers raced to the ring to aid Sting, while Rude, Dangerously, and Medusa scurried away. The December 14th episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Marcus Alexander Bagwell make his in-ring debut, defeating Rip Rogers. At ringside, Jim Ross interviewed Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who cut an intense promo to hype his upcoming match against Beautiful Bobby Eaton. In the main event, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat faced Beautiful Bobby Eaton, who had Medusa in his corner. The action got out of hand, with Steamboat and Eaton battling up into the bleachers. They battled tooth and nail back in the ring, trading pinfall attempts at a rapid pace. Steamboat used a crucifix pin to score a pinfall victory over Eaton. Immediately following the match, Medusa ambushed Steamboat with a brutal kick. As Steamboat inched towards Medusa, stunning Steve Austin ambushed him from behind. Eaton joined Austin in stomping down Steamboat, with Barry Windham racing in to make the save. The December 15th edition of the main event saw the Young Pistols battle the United States Tag Team Champions, the Patriots. Showing a new attitude, the Young Pistols resorted to illegal tactics to trick the Patriots and pick up the pinfall victory. The Young Pistols were crowned the new United States Tag Team Champions. The December 21st episode of WCW Pro saw Jim Ross interview the United States Champion, Ravishing Rick Rude, Paulie Dangerously, and Medusa. Sting interrupted, challenging Rude to face him in the ring. Throwing down his robe, Rude marched to the ring, with Dangerously attempting to talk sense into him. Sting reached over the top rope and got his hands on Dangerously, with Rude ambushing the Stinger. Rude launched off the top rope, with Sting meeting him with a punch to the stomach. Sting proceeded to put Rude in the Scorpion Deathlock, with dangerously pulling at Sting's hair to try to save his client. Wrestlers and officials filled the ring in an attempt to pry Sting off of Rude. Sting finally let go, pounding his chest as the Dangerous Alliance attended to a hurt Rude. In the main event, World Tag Team Champions Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the Natural Dustin Rhodes teamed with Flyin' Brian Pillman to face Dangerous Alliance members Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, and Beautiful Bobby Eaton, who had Paul Lee Dangerously in their corner. The Dangerous Alliance triple-teamed Rhodes, wearing him down until Pillman made the tag. With all six battling it out, Pillman soared off the top rope, taking down Anderson with a high cross body. While the referee was distracted, Eaton flew off the top rope, crashing onto Pillman with an Alabama Jam. Anderson slumped onto Pillman, picking up the pinfall victory. Barry Windham raced to the ring, battering Anderson, while the brawl continued on the floor. The December 21st episode of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview Cactus Jack and Abdullah the Butcher at ringside. Cactus said that the plan when he and Abdullah came to WCW was to wreak havoc. They discussed Battle Bowl, with Cactus saying that he and Abdullah would be the winners at Starrcade. The interview ended with Cactus and Abdullah bashing one another with a kendo stick. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat battled the WCW World Television Champion, Stunning Steve Austin, who was accompanied by Medusa. The action was fierce, with a competitive bout ensuing for the gold. Things heated up, with the referee getting knocked out in the crossfire. Steamboat soared off the top rope, smashing Austin with a big chop to the head. A second official ran in to make the 3 count, despite Austin's foot being under the bottom rope. The referees argued, with the match restarting and Austin tossing Steamboat over the top rope to cause an immediate disqualification. Medusa swung at Steamboat, who caught her arm and snarled at her. Austin ambushed Steamboat, with Beautiful Bobby Eaton joining in on the beatdown. Barry Windham raced in, but also suffered a beatdown at the hands of Austin and Eaton. Steamboat got a hold of a chair, with Austin and Eaton retreating to end the broadcast. The December 28th edition of World Championship Wrestling saw Jim Ross interview Paul Lee Dangerously, who bragged about the Dangerous Alliance getting their hands on Sting. Dangerously said, "You might as well go up north and sign a contract elsewhere, where the physical demands are not like they are here in World Championship Wrestling." The rest of the Dangerous Alliance surrounded Dangerously, who said that Dustin Rhodes, Ron Simmons, Barry Windham, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat are all next. Ravishing Rick Rude said that Steamboat has been warned. Footage aired from Worldwide Wrestling, with Jim Ross interviewing Marcus Alexander Bagwell. Paulie Dangerously interrupted, offering Bagwell a shot at Stunning Steve Austin's World Television Championship. The young rookie said that he wasn't ready yet to face Austin. Angry, Dangerously said that Austin was willing to give Bagwell a break, but said that Bagwell is afraid of success. Dangerously became furious once Bagwell told him that he's been training with Sting. Insulted that Bagwell turned down his offer, but was willing to take help from Sting, Dangerously became frantic, saying that opportunity was knocking at Bagwell's door. Dangerously poked Bagwell's forehead, which triggered the young rookie. Bagwell knocked down Dangerously with a punch to the face. The rest of the Dangerous Alliance ambushed Bagwell in a brutal beatdown. Sting came to the rescue, but the Dangerous Alliance outnumbered him. Ravishing Rick Rude whipped Sting against a steel guardrail, with Arn Anderson cuffing the Stinger to it. Rude bashed Sting repeatedly with a plaster leg cast, with the Stinger left unconscious. Starrcade, Battle Bowl took place on December 29th from the Norfolk Scope in Norfolk, Virginia. The Battle Bowl concept saw 40 names thrown in a tumbler with tag teams drawn at random. The winning teams from each match would advance to a Battle Royal to determine the winner of Battle Bowl. Eric Bischoff, Missy Hyatt, and Magnum TA stood on a stage, drawing names at random. All 40 wrestlers stood on the stage and would make their entrance once their name was called. In the later matches, the heels and babyfaces sat in separate locker rooms, with everyone watching a monitor and making their entrances once their name was called. Cactus Jack's name was called, with Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker drawn as his partner. Abdullah the Butcher wasn't happy, ambushing Parker in a brutal beatdown so that he could be the partner of Cactus. As Abdullah walked down the aisle, officials caught up to him to escort him away. This left Cactus alone to face Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Todd Champion. Parker eventually made his way to the ring, crawling to his corner to support Cactus, but eventually getting pinned by Steamboat. Sting made his entrance, with Abdullah the Butcher announced as his partner. Abdullah made his way to the ring, attacking Sting with a kendo stick. Flying Brian Pillman was called as one of their opponents, racing down the ramp, jumping onto Abdullah and bashing him with a kendo stick. Abdullah tossed Pillman off the stage and crashing against a steel guardrail. Meanwhile, Beautiful Bobby Eaton attacked the wounded knee of Sting and then tossed him into the ring. Sting retaliated, leaping over the top rope to knock Eaton down with a dive on the ramp. Abdullah got a hold of a pencil, stabbing Sting with it repeatedly. Pillman drop-kicked Abdullah to save Sting, despite being on the opposing teams. While Sting and Eaton brawled on the floor, Pillman managed to body slam Abdullah in the middle of the ring. Pillman dove off the top rope, crashing onto Abdullah with a big splash. Despite being partners, Pillman refused Eaton's tag, not wanting to fight his friend Sting. Eaton tried tagging in Abdullah, which the referee wouldn't allow. With the referee's back turned, Cactus Jack interfered and attempted to hit Sting with a kendo stick. Sting moved, and Cactus accidentally struck Abdullah. After drop-kicking Cactus out of the ring, Sting leaped off the top rope, taking down Eaton with a high cross body and scoring the pinfall victory. Following the bout, Abdullah attacked Cactus, with the two brawling through security and up the aisle in a wild scene. The 20 winners of the tag team matches advanced to a 2-ring battle royal. An initial battle royal would take place in Ring 1, with the losers thrown into the second ring for another battle royal. The winner from the first bout would face the winner from Ring 2 to determine the winner of Battle Bowl. Amongst the chaos, Sting and the United States Champion Ravishing Rick Rude brawled and eliminated one another from Ring 1, battling their way into a packed Ring 2. The final two in Ring 1 were Big Van Vader and the World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package Lex Luger. After a hard-hitting back-and-forth battle, Luger clotheslined Vader over the top rope to win the Ring 1 Battle Royal. The final four in Ring 2 were Sting, Rude, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and the World Television Champion, Stunning Steve Austin. Rude charged at Steamboat, who moved, with Austin eliminated by Rude's clothesline. Angry, Rude threw Steamboat over the top rope. Steamboat held on, skimming the cat and using his legs to pull Rude over the top rope for an elimination. Rude grabbed Steamboat, pulling him to the floor for an elimination, making Sting the winner of the Ring 2 Battle Royal. Irate, Rude ambushed Sting and nailed him with a rude awakening. In the Battle Bowl Finals, Luger beat down an injured and exhausted Sting. Harley Race tried to interfere, with Sting blocking a punch and body slamming Race on the ramp. Luger shoved Sting off the ramp, with the Stinger crashing against a steel guardrail. Sting got his second wind, tossing Luger against multiple guardrails before rolling him back into the ring for more punishment. Race rolled in, with Sting planting him with a suplex. Luger dodged a Stinger splash, with Sting crashing against the top turnbuckle. Still, Sting battled back and pushed Luger over the top rope to win the match. Sting was declared the winner of the first ever Battle Bowl. Fireworks burst above the ring, with pyro lighting up the entrance stage. Would Sting get his revenge on the Dangerous Alliance in the new year? Find out next time on Squared Circle History as we continue our WCW arc and cover World Championship Wrestling in 1992. If you'd like to support the show, give us a follow on Instagram at squared.circle.history. Like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and you can purchase t-shirts from Squared Circle History and Pro Wrestling Rushmore at Pro Wrestling Tees. Thank you for tuning in, and keep dropping elbows.